What?
We told him yesterday.
No,
he's going to be there.
Would you?
Yeah.
I've seen you here, but the picture on LinkedIn, I didn't connect.
Well, I was a lot younger than that. I don't update that.
Well, yeah, because they said
My wife yells at me for that. She's like, really? She says, you're not going through with that picture for county. I said, I sure as hell am.
It's me, I'm not lying. I didn't say any when.
yeah, and he said, Matt said that you've come, and I'm like, I just haven't.
But no, yeah, I've seen him.
No, that's good.
And,
Thanks for
I'm just telling
coming
you,
up to me.
he's retired, not doing
Look
anything.
forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Go over the mountain and.
Yeah, please
No,
tell me.
if elected, there's a lot to learn, so.
Some of the older staff are still there.
One thing I hope to prove to everybody is that
And the
Oh
other
my
thing
goodness.
is too, that,
Yeah, you know
I'm
what?
willing to, sit
he
through and
probably
listen
hasn't
to
seen
what.
some of the, like some of the new recycling stuff.
No, he probably got it. Because I thought
Yep.
health was
Absolutely.
No.
Hey, it's gonna be a big, it's my first rodeo here.
Right,
Big,
right.
like, season
Oh,
of,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
politics, so.
But you know what,
Oh, okay.
I mean, don't ever let that bother you. I mean, I hired new people at the township. I've been at the township 14 years. And when we had people that were
That's all right.
40 years and they're leaving, I'm thinking, oh my God, what the hell am I gonna do? And the people that filled it, the people that were replaced, I mean, I'll take pride in that we hired the right person.
Right, right.
Those people excelled within months,
Joe was
Yeah.
were caught up to speed.
well
and-
thought of. And-
It'll be just a
Yeah,
transition.
I'll say something, I may even call him.
Yep, yep, yep.
Anytime. just let-
I totally forgot about
His name for himself. Tucked in lives.
That's
in
today.
Kentucky anyhow. I'd seen good.
I don't know, is it today?
Well, and he.
Well, then I don't know.
told me he wrote me and said,
Yeah, Cindy takes care of it.
I don't know how much longer.
Well, then you can come to the next one if you don't go to this one.
I'm here to help you as long as I did. He retired in April of 16.
I think they do like cookies or something. I mean, it's good, it's good.
So,
How are you, sir?
one time I called him, I had a question.
I got it covered because Carrie is.
Yeah, just ask Cindy, and if you miss it this month.
Carrie has an employer in this town for something, so.
Okay, good. So we made it.
Let's take a
I'm trying to
third of some pay.
That's
That's right.
That's what I heard.
Good luck with that.
Why do you do that?
I mean, we're every month, that's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the advantage because they call
I
you
think
by
I got
name
what
when
you
you
want.
walk,
I
so.
hope the other two feel that.
They will.
Okay, thank you.
I knew you did.
No, please pass.
But yes,
that
you
on.
would know.
Yeah.
Maya, I've never met her.
Yeah, yeah, she said
How are you?
so.
So, how you doing?
Yeah, I checked her out. How are you?
Good.
Yeah.
And serve my public.
Yeah.
I am.
How we doing, sir?
How you doing?
I'm good.
Deputy one. Are you also sheriff one?
How you doing?
I did let me understand that nobody responded. Not that I was even working. I heard
Yeah, oh no. I'm not gonna get too deep because you would always miss something.
Here. When are you going to buy one?
Good morning.
How's the baby? When is she coming back to work? Done it for you?
I'm here.
I don't think he would.
Well,
They keep using that bird I took you over. Now, is there any other one that gives them a break? They want to use the stock stuff. Even on my show, it really comes into
did you take care of that yesterday once we left? Closings next week.
Morning. Who do we have on the phone? Morning, Counselor. Who else do we have?
Maya, no lie.
Morning, Maya. Sound like you got the flu.
I do, unfortunately.
Feel better.
Aw.
Cleveland.
I'm Art Scott, this is Tony.
Okay, good morning, Commissioner. Okay, it's 10:02, so we will ask you to please rise for the opening prayer and pledge of allegiance before we convene our Commissioners' public meeting. Dear gracious God, we are blessed in so many ways. We thank you for your grace and your mercy. Lord, we recognize and are thankful for the freedoms we have in this great land. Let us not forget they came from enormous sacrifice. It is vital that we remain on alert daily, as there are ones that want to take those freedoms away. We're called to pray for our leaders and those in authority. Whether we agree or not with a leader, we are to honor the position they hold with prayer and respect. When our leaders succeed in their decisions that are in accordance with your will, we succeed as a whole. Next Monday, we'll reflect on President's Day. We're especially grateful for leaders like Washington and Lincoln. These two forefathers faced incredible opposition in their days. You state in the book of Proverbs, for lack of guidance, a nation falls, but victory is won through many advisors. These two men chose to fall on their knees to seek your wisdom. They cried out in fear to seek your knowledge and understanding which you provided. In your word you also state, he makes nations great and destroys them. He enlarges nations and disperses them. May we learn from our forefathers and seek your guidance and wisdom daily. May we fall upon our knees in prayer so that we remain one nation under God. We pray for our leaders to have a servant's heart and serve as you've placed us to serve. So on this morning, may we take this opportunity to have President's Day reflect our history and our country's anticipated future. Let us not be consumed by fear, anxiety, nor pride in man. Let's take the opportunity to pray for each other and thank you for that, which is good. Now we ask for your hand to be over our meeting and your grace and love and protection over our valley. These things we humbly request in your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we'll convene the Commissioners' public meeting and ask for approval of the minutes of the previous meeting.
I move to approve.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so carried.
Aye.
Commissioner, we're going to move personnel actions up.
1 second. Public comment on agenda items only at this time?
None online.
Okay, thank you. All right, go ahead, Director.
We're going to jump to 4.0, personnel actions. Jessica.
Good morning, Director. Good
Morning.
morning, Commissioners. Seeking your approval on the following personnel actions. These are conditional offers subject to the successful completion of a background check and other employment conditions. For the prison, Chloe Perrin, a correctional counselor, full-time transfer, $24.29 per hour, and she's transferring effective February 19th. For the courts, Erica Grimes, moving into the MDJ court supervisor position, full-time transfer, $18.99 per hour, anticipated to transfer on February 19th. For the tax assessment office, Pam Kowalski, moving into the tax claim assistant financial technician position. Her pay rate is $25.75 per hour, and she's anticipated to transfer on February 19th. Also for tax assessment, Cindy Black, clerk for tax claim, full-time transfer, $18.58 per hour, anticipated to transfer on February 19th as well. For the DA's office, Gabriella Wise, moving into the victim witness coordinator position at $20.97 per hour, anticipated to transfer on February 19th. For PRC, David Couch, hired as a resident supervisor, full-time replacement position at $17.18 per hour, anticipated to start on February 27th. For the prison, Nathan Straub, correctional officer, full-time replacement at $20 per hour, anticipated to start on March 6th. Also for the prison, Hunter Hess, a CO relief replacement at $20 per hour, anticipated to start on March 6th. Also for the prison, Karen Benson, an LPN, full-time replacement, $33.60 per hour, and anticipated to start on March the 6th.
Okay, it's good to see that we continue to have guards hired at the correctional officers hired at the prison as we bring the females back and restore to its original staff.
So, Jessica, you notice on the bottom we say those are all full-time replacements, and then on some of the others, I think that they are not new positions except for one in tax assessment. It might be helpful on the others also if we indicate whether it's a new position or a replacement, just so
Okay.
that we can keep an eye on, how many new people we're hiring.
Okay.
I'm almost positive all of them except tax assessment. Tax assessment is a new position that we approve. And the others, I think, but that, you always put replacement, I notice, on the correctional officers,
Yeah.
which is
Okay.
great. So if you
Yep.
could keep an eye on that.
I will. Yep.
Thanks. I'll move to approve.
Okay. Have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so carried.
Aye.
Yeah.
You want to recess the Commissioners' Public Need for the Salary Board? Since, you want to do that first? Or you want
No, we can catch up to that.
to, okay. Going back to reports?
Yep.
Let's go back to bid openings first.
Okay. Is Chris online, or are you taking it?
Okay.
Overall and rewrite, county zoning ordinance and county subdivision and land development ordinance.
Okay, we had 4 responses. Clavon Design, $72,925.37. Urban Research and Development, $72,200. Cedarville, $70,250. And Michael Baker was $75,000.
So for the public, this is, Ms. Rossman, we are not required to take the lowest bid here, right?
Do you want me to come up?
Yeah, why don't
Yes,
you come up
please.
and explain to the public the process that you will, because we have a few people here today, it'd be good for them to know.
Sure. The county has a county municipal partnership zoning ordinance where we cover zoning in 19 municipalities in the county. For the most part, it is the more rural and some suburban areas. And we also cover around 24, 25 municipalities for subdivision land development ordinances. So zoning is the regulations that it's regulating what you're allowed to put where. Subdivision land development is an ordinance that tells you, what design criteria you have to meet in order to put something. And that goes along with stormwater and things like that. And our ordinance has not had a major update since, I believe in the 90s. We've done small updates when we've needed to, like the solar ordinance, the solar energy facilities last year, and some of the other things over the previous years. But we need to catch up with court cases, with new laws at the state, so we really need to reorganize the document and make sure we're covering what we need to. So we are doing some of it in-house, and we're also hiring a consultant to help us with a lot of the legal and new ways of doing some of the more newer planning methods, so we can make our ordinance fit what's currently happening in the area.
It's important in the area of development because when people come, if we have a more modern document that's conducive to
Easier to use also.
easier to use, conducive to economic development, we have a better chance of getting people to invest.
Right, and we also got a state grant to help pay for some of this. We're matching it with it's a $50,000 grant from the state, and we match it with $25,000 from the county, and then our staff time will be the other $25,000 match. So, we're going to be able to overhaul both of our ordinances, really for $25,000. out of our pockets, so it's a pretty good deal. And we'll involve the public through the whole process. This is something the planning commission will have public meetings on. We'll be doing some surveys, online surveys and things like that. So we'll be involving the public and the municipalities that this involves in the process.
Okay, thanks, Shane. Thank you, Nikki.
Okay, moving on to reports. Caitlin, approved accounts payable cash requirement report.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Presented for your ratification are invoices due through February 22nd, 2023, to be paid on February 15th, 2023, in the amount of $1,470,570.09. The breakdown is as follows, with 45.50% being funded by the general fund at $669,128.02. 2.87% is funded by grants and other sources at $42,183.01. 34.68% is being funded by RMS at $509,998.30. And 16.95% is being funded by escrow at $249,260.76.
Okay, thank you. Have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Any questions or comments for Galen? No. Okay, hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, so carried. Thank you, Galen.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll recess the Commissioners' Public Meeting for the Salary Board, and we'll convene the Salary Board this time.
All right, Commissioners, seeking your approval on the 2023 TDA and salary schedule.
Excuse me, can I have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Did you ask for a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was on autopilot.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
And a second? And a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
I'll
Okay.
second.
All in favor, say aye.
I'll third.
Aye.
Aye.
So carried 4-0. Okay.
All right, 5.3, Commissioners, request to table this for 1 week. Need a little bit more work to make sure it's accurate.
Okay. I have a motion to table it.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
A
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
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 This is like a choreographed play. It's not really set up that way. It's just we grow.
Synchronized swimming.
We grow into synchronized swimming. We grow into habits doing things.
Well,
Okay.
that's carried 4-0. Next.
5.4, seeking approval on the following salary board action in information services. Request to add a full-time senior technology administrator with a starting pay of $65,000 per year. This is part of the overall reorganization.
Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
A second.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so carried 4-0.
We can adjourn the.
At this time, we'll adjourn the Salary Board, and we'll reconvene the Commissioners' Public Meeting, and we'll move on to informational items. Maya?
I'm really gonna have that.
We missed TDA.
I'm sorry,
Let me
TDA.
get my voice.
I'm gonna do mine, so she doesn't have to
Yeah,
talk.
go ahead.
All right, TDA actions. Commissioners seeking your approval on the TDA actions which are listed on attachment C. Same thing as we did in salary board in information technology. Request to add full-time senior technology administrator with a starting pay of $65,000 per year.
Okay, a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, so carried 3-0.
Now, moving on to info items. We're acknowledging that the county will be requesting bids for janitorial services for the county health center and wellness center, health and wellness center. And we are also going to bids for the Williamsport Regional Relief Well Rehabilitation and Replacement Project.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to action items. 8.1, vote to approve the 2023 TDA and salary scale.
Okay, I have a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, so carried.
8.2 goes along with the item from before that we're tabling until next week.
Okay, got a motion to table.
I'll move to table.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so carried.
Aye.
Okay, 8.3.
Is there anything that Maya has left on the agenda?
No.
I do not.
Okay.
Okay, Maya. Well, I hope you feel better soon.
Thank you.
Yep, take care.
Okay, Commissioner seeking your approval to reappoint Christopher A. Logue and William J. Martin to the Williamsport Municipal Airport Authority, effective 1/1/2023, going through December 31st, 2026.
Can I have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 I'd like to add, too, that we have two openings at this time. Besides the two we're just reappointed, we have two openings for the Airport Authority. So if there's anyone out there that would like to apply to be considered for the Airport Authority, please contact our office, or you can get online under the different authorities and submit an application. We'd like to get those appointments reviewed within the next week or two and have appointments for those two positions that are left open at this time.
And we want to thank Mr. Logan and Mr. Martin for the term that they served, and we appreciate their continued service.
Yes, thank you. Okay, 8.4.
Okay, Commissioner seeking your approval on emergency resolution 2023-02 for repairs to the plumbing system in 3rd Street Plaza. 2023 budgeted funds are available. And this is due to the urgency of the situation to get the repair done.
I have a motion.
I'll move to approve.
And second?
Second.
Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
so carried.
8.5, Jason?
Good morning, Director, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Commissioners, action item 8.5 is Resolution 2023-03, and this is the acceptance of the offer from the GSA for the purchase of the Federal Correctional Complex. I don't even know quite where to start with this project in a description. We have John Bogie back here that could say he was kind of at the ground level with Director Tucker, my predecessor. Director Tucker is one that had the vision for where we are today. This is for the purchase of 1,067 acres that encompasses the land that we are already on our use permit, which is a little over 400 acres that we've occupied since the late 70s. It is in the total amount of $6.5 million. In this resolution, there's a upfront 10% of $650,000 down payment, and once you approve that today, Commissioners, this will then start the clock for the closing, which we would anticipate within 60 days, as I understand, sir. This will bring longevity and life to the landfill for decades, immeasurable amount of decades. This is what people always refer to as the camp area. This is the old camp that the Federal Bureau of Prison had, and around, and some of it's the land that's south of our recycling center. So this will give us years and years and years of capacity and disposal. So much, honestly, it will not be in my career. The next director, or the director after him, would be the one to be permitting some of those cells that far along. But this project has been probably in the works, I would say, John, 20 years? At least 20 years. So this is one of the projects that I did inherit from Director Tucker, and I'm just glad to be part of it and see this through. And I think this is, it's exciting because I know how many, I would be lost to try to remember all the people who contributed to this project, previous boards of commissioners and previous director, deputy directors of RMS, staff, previous director of administrations, and Director McDermott himself. So this has been, as far as project longevity, this is probably the longest project that I've ever been involved in. Next, we'll get the leachate tank finished up for you, Commissioner, but right now, we're
I'll do a somersault.
yeah, I bring this up.
Inside of it.
I'll bring this up jokingly. There was always the bet between Director Ernie Larson, and Commissioner Ernie Larson and Director Tucker over a stake dinner as to when this land deal would come through. Some of the hurdles that we have had to go through is so many of the folks in the Federal Bureau of Prison system have retired. They're in and they're out, and there was just always that constant trying to re-educate, even as far as Board of Commissioners. You're just trying to get everybody up to speed of what the possibilities exist with this property and why it's so important. The funding for this property, we have the funding set aside, although I'll let that to Director of Administrations as far as how we decide, and you, the Board of Commissioners. There are some options I know you're considering, but we have planned on this for some time. So I'm quite proud as one of my projects to deliver to you guys for your ratification of this resolution.
When we talk about generational use for our ARPA funds, and this is something that's going to be for generations to come, the expansion of our landfill. And I know Commissioner Sawyer has often joked that he has been here for a large portion of that, and he would be retired before it would happen. So I think it's going to happen about the same time you're going to retire, Commissioner.
Before that.
Unbelievable.
Yep, so it is unbelievable.
I think that what you point out shows that there's a certain stability in our government at the county level, which is very important to getting long-term projects like this done. In other words, a new Board of Commissioners could come in and say, well, we're not going to be spending time, this is not going to happen, and so forth. And the same thing with the staff. When we emphasize trying to create an atmosphere that keeps staff here for 30 years, one of the reasons we do that is because projects like this that extend on 20 years need continuity of staff to be able to explain to elected officials who come and go why it's essential to do this. The commissioners who did this landfill 30 years ago or 40 years ago had the foresight to understand that it was going to be an asset for the county. And I'm going to ask Steve Sims to tell us how much money, if he knows off the top of his head, how much money has gone into the general fund.
Over the last 5 years, approximately $12.5 million has gone into the general fund from proceeds from the tipping fees and all the revenue sources of the landfill.
Right, and understand that only 20% of the waste in the landfill comes from our residents. So it's important, especially in a rural community where we don't have lots of access to ways to create revenue, right? Because we can't, we don't have a lot of, other than property tax, we can't do anything. We're not, like Philadelphia can impose a sales tax.
We've invested our money.
We've invested our money, absolutely. So I think it's important for the public to understand that landfill is an asset, and the $6.5 million for the amount of acreage we're getting and for the future potential of it is really something that's going to be very good. And of course, we do it in a way that allows that land to be safe. We keep the leachate safe. We don't want to pollute our land and water at with 80% of the out of county waste, and we don't. We do it in a way that is up to DEP regulations. And every cost that we have at the landfill is paid by landfill fees. So in other words, their salaries, the equipment, their pension, their health care, everything is covered. And then on top of it, as Director of Budget and Finance, Mr. Sims said, it put in the last 5 years, it put 12.5 million.
Not to mention also, sir, the amount of vendors that we support in the area.
Right.
And there's also funds that we set aside for every ton. It has to go to the local community, and that helps with their fire and EMS and police support too through the Montgomery area and townships.
That's a good point. All those people who fix equipment and who provide services.
Okay.
Commissioner,
I think it's also important to emphasize that there are different ways of funding this. And me personally, and I'd like to hear from the public as well, is the landfill does have the cash to purchase it. But I'm looking at the interest rates the way they are, it would make more sense to possibly go out for a bond and increase the amount that the landfill pays the commissioners to offset that debt service. So I think we would be way ahead in the long run by doing that way, but we'll research that.
Okay, thank you. Any director, you have something?
Yeah, I was going to say, my next action item will talk about a potential alternative to how we're going to purchase this. And it's along the bond line that the commissioner brought up. But regardless of funding strategy, I think it's important to note that whether we buy it outright or we go for a bond or some other instrument, that will be fully funded by the landfill and its closure funds.
Right, thank you. And also, this does not include the land around the church?
No,
Or
thank you,
the
excellent point.
cemetery.
Yes.
Yeah.
It does
For the
not
public.
include the church and the cemetery. That has been carved out. That was carved out from day one as director when I came on board in 2015 and 16. I told the federal government we were carving that out. And I see our good neighbor Larry Stout in the back row. He is a neighbor to the landfill and is also part of the crew that helps use the church and stuff. And so, yes, we are carving out. Thank you, Commissioner. That was one of the points I wanted to bring up. I had forgot.
Thank you. Okay, I have a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, so carried.
And our thanks.
Congratulations to all the staff that has put in, I mean, literally decades of time to bring this to fruition.
Some who have passed on, such as Director Tucker. Also, thanks to the federal government for allowing us to purchase it and for sticking in with us on it through many administrations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, 8.6, Commissioners, seeking your approval of Resolution 2023-04. This is to authorize the reimbursement for prior expenditures from the proceeds of the tax-exempt obligations in connection with the purchase of real estate, i.e. The GSA property we just talked about. This resolution itself does not bind us to have to go out and purchase a bond. It just allows us the opportunity to reimburse ourselves for the expenses, the 10% in the final amount of the properties if we choose to utilize a bond.
And I take it that our bond counsel who advised us on crafting this wanted us to put a vote on this before we made the purchase or put the bond, before we floated the bond.
If we didn't go out for a bond and put the 10% down,
Yeah.
the $650,000, we couldn't include that in the bond.
Got it? Okay.
Without this.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, got a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so carried.
Aye.
8.7 and 8.8, Ken.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning, Ken.
First one before you, 8.7 is a contract with the Lutron lighting system. They do service and maintenance on it and do any patches or stuff that needs to be put on their programs.
Okay, it's a 2023 budget item. Have a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so carried.
Next one is an agreement with Johnson Controls to test and monitor our fire alarm systems for the courthouse and 3rd Street Plaza.
Okay, again, it's a budget item for this year.
Yes.
Have a motion.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, so carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
8.9, Forest. Settlement agreement with DOJ.
Morning.
Good morning, Forrest.
So this item is a settlement agreement with the United States Department of Justice. It's been a long time coming because Department of Justice first visited Lycoming County back in 2017. It happened in the course of Department of Justice visiting a number of counties in the U.S. Middle District. So we're not being singled out. This is part of a larger project they've been undertaking relating to accessibility at county polling places in the Commonwealth. In this settlement agreement, the county is agreeing to take steps to make all of its polling places fully accessible. And puts us in a tough spot. This is a big project, and we very much have to comply. There are really no good alternatives to this unless we wanted to go to court against the federal government, and that reminds you of the song, I fought the law and the law won. It's probably not going to go well. So, the county did not ask for this, and it will be a cost to the county. However, this is important work that we're proposing. It's not just a voter services project. The scope is far greater than that. This is a county-wide initiative. It's a generational investment in infrastructure with generational implications that will benefit not just voters at polling places on election day, but also everyone who uses those facilities every other day of the year. And I guess I kind of feel lucky I get to be here for 2 generational projects in one meeting. Who thought that was going to happen, right? And so today really is just the beginning. Signing this settlement agreement, even though it came 5 years down the line, that really is just the beginning, the first step of many with many more steps to follow. But that's where we're at today.
Forrest, can we utilize Act 88 funds for these improvements?
Ultimately, that would call for a legal conclusion from the solicitor, but my layperson, off-the-cuff, shoot-from-the-hip reaction is probably not, because Act 88 specifies a number of categories of expenditures that qualify. It's possible, some of the details of expenditures that fit into these categories are still being, I think, reviewed and worked out by DCED and Department of State. But first of all, it's not likely. And
could you explain the public Act 88 fund?
Yeah, Act 88 was an act passed by the legislature in last year, 2022, and it as long as the funding is reauthorized every year, which is another question, it creates an annual funding stream for counties to run elections. It's $45 million annually divided among the counties. We get a portion of that $45 million based on our percentage of the number of registered voters in the Commonwealth. So everybody get out there and try to register some people so we get some more money next year. But our percentage right now, it was $360,000 or so. So to the extent that even if we determined yes, Act 88 money can be used, we've already spoken for a lot of it, and it probably wouldn't make a big dent in the kinds of improvements that we could be talking about. I mean, it could depend on the facility, but in cases where, you could be dealing with a ramp, you can look at what the investment that was required by the city for the ramp at their city hall, what that cost. It's a, pretty good indicator.
So it's important for us, because I'm sometimes surprised when I talk to constituents and they're like, well, why do we have to do this? Why do we have to build that ramp? It costs so much money. I think there's a disconnect among us in terms of not just what the law is, right? Because the ADA was passed 33 years ago.
1990.
1990. But there's also a disconnect, I think, in our understanding, unless we are in the shoes of people who can't get into a polling place because they're a veteran who lost both limbs defending the country. They're a senior who has had diabetes and had to have something removed. They are a child who was born with cerebral palsy from, or cystic fibrosis from birth, and have struggled in a wheelchair their whole life. And I think that it's easy, and it's not because we're bad people, it's not because we don't care about these people, it's because we don't really experience on a day-to-day basis what they go through. This is what this is about. It's 81 polling places, 71 of them the federal government has determined are not in compliance. And of the 71, about 25 are seriously need to be fixed immediately, right?
So they went to, the 20, 25, 26 you mentioned, those are the ones that Department of Justice personally visited and identified issues. Now, ultimately, during the course of this agreement, part of our obligation is to go out to all of the other polling places on our own and identify and correct issues.
Right.
So we know about issues at a certain number, but we have to look at the rest. And you're right. In my job, I have to look at a lot of these things from all the perspectives, and I understand the perspective coming into this saying, well, it's another unfunded mandate from the federal government, right? We get those all the time. But another perspective on it is absolutely that it's easy for us to look at a facility and kind of eyeball it and say, yeah, it looks like it should be okay for someone to get in there. And I say this as someone who was not intimately familiar with accessibility, regulations. Still am not, but I've had to learn a little bit in a short time. And you realize as you look at some of the issues that were identified by Department of Justice that they really could pose issues, and they're the kinds of things that we take for granted if we are able-bodied. You look at a facility and you realize that they're looking at, well, where's that person going to park? It needs to be flat, it needs to be leveled. You can't have slopes that go one direction or the other, or a wheelchair could roll away. You need a loading zone, if they got to get a wheelchair out of a van. It's not just about the parking, they've still got to get to the front door. So what's that look like? Is it paved? Is it level? Are there gaps? Are there cracks? Is there a threshold on the door that's too high? Is the door wide enough? Is it easy enough to pull? Are there protruding objects either along that path or inside the building? All things that if we saw it, we would just kind of navigate our way around it, but it's non-trivial for someone if they're in the kind of position that you described. And I have a cousin who's paraplegic. He's been in a wheelchair for about 3/4 of his life.
And so the flip side of this also is, I don't know if many people remember Jesse. What was Jesse's?
Oh, yeah. What was his last name?
What was Jesse's last name?
Oh, shoot.
He's married to Krista. He was at one point.
Yeah.
Jesse was in a wheelchair and achieved things that many of us in this room have never done, probably never will do, between becoming a bodybuilding champion, painting, writing a book of poetry. I mean, just doing an incredible number of things, which is great, which every person should have an opportunity to do in their lifetime. And so the flip side is that when we make things accessible, we give people the opportunity to participate in what we all do, which is we live, we work, we go to school, we have our homes, we have our families, and so forth. So I think that I say this because I think the public is going to see some numbers coming down the road on what we have to do to fix it. And the reaction may be, oh my gosh, why are these guys and gals who are commissioners doing this? Well, the reason is because A, it's the right thing to do, and B, it's the legal thing to do.
Yes.
And I hope that we focus more on the right part of it and realize that the legal only reminds us to do the right thing, right? That's what the point of law is. It reminds us to do the right thing, so.
And we've had 33 years to do it.
And we've had 33 years to do it, and in this county, we were notified 5 or 6 years ago. So, and that's why we've done things like we're asking the school districts to help us out where they can. And again, we hope the school districts understand that we're doing that because we're trying to do the best we can with the least pressure on our constituents. So
It's not the first time we've made investments like this. We did it with our voting system. We're required in our voting system to have it accommodate voters with disabilities so they can participate equally and with dignity in the voting process alongside everybody else. When somebody comes in, they have the chance to use the device that can accommodate them if they have problems with their vision or problems with hearing. They have the chance, if they can't hand mark the ballot, that touchscreen is connected to a printer, it prints a marked ballot that critically looks almost identical to all the other ballots everybody is voting, so that when it gets mixed in with everything else, it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. So they are able to substantially participate the same way that everybody else does when they're voting their ballot. This is just plugging in the other part of that process, is how do we get them into that room where they can get their ballot and vote it.
And the truth is that we are all on a path to being less able than we were the day before, right?
I feel it every day.
Well, and it's the truth. I mean, some of us start out very early in life with that challenge, and some of us are blessed to not have the challenge till later. But eventually, we all are going to reach a point of being less able than we were the day before.
My mom was one of the most active women I knew, and she lost her leg. Last 5 years of her life was in a wheelchair, and I took her to places where we experienced these challenges. Going up over a threshold of a door, doors not being wide enough, certain things that you take for granted, and we have to be mindful. And any one of us could be in this situation, and we have to make sure these adjustments are made so they can live normally like we do. Yes.
What's been the general response of the school districts?
It's been mixed. Forrest and I went over to Montgomery. Montgomery has their entire school, K through 12 in one school. It's on a hill. Most gyms are handicapped accessible. They have their separate entrances in the back. Their situation is different. There's an elevator there. You have to go in the back. It was very complicated. So Forrest and I came out there and we said, this can't happen. This isn't a facility where you can really use. So you have to look at alternative sites, and right down at the bottom of the hill is the fire hall. And so, we had conversations with them and working out an agreement with them. So it's not so much that we have to use the school, but we're trying to find a location within that area that we don't have to spend the monies for something that's utilized 2 days a year, a primary and a general election. And hopefully we can find a location where the whole community agrees upon. And but some schools have been very receptive. Other schools are like, no, we don't want that at all. And we don't want to get into a court battle or anything like that. It's not going to help anybody. It's just going to make people upset. So we're working with the locations where they've been identified to see what the best facilities are and work together.
And we recognize the schools have their own challenges. I mean, with violence in schools, with concerns about keeping kids safe, with all sorts of pressures. I don't envy the school boards or the people who run the schools, because they have their own challenges that are separate from ones we have.
And every district you look at is very much its own puzzle that you have to kind of assess and figure out. In some areas, you may have a school facility that is a possibility and it needs to be looked at. But as Commissioner Metzger and Mirabito have observed, in some cases they've engaged in new construction that is very accessible and might be good. In other cases, we've seen this play out in school districts around the county where they've kind of debated about bringing old school facilities, rehabilitating them, or do you keep them open or not. So in some cases it might not be as promising or as compelling an option, and so there you are looking at the alternatives such as municipal buildings, the fire halls, the churches, all those places.
Personally, I like to see us find locations within the community so that we don't have to put thousands of dollars into a facility that we utilize 2 days a year. Okay. Any other discussion or questions? Motion.
I'll move to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so carried. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner comment.
Commissioner Massar, you have any comments?
No, I just wish there was another option there to give us a little bit more time for the polling places, such as identifying them and seeing if they would accept a mail-in ballot until everything could be done.
Okay. Any other comments? We'll move on to public comment. Any online? Any from the public? Yes, Mr. Adams? Morning.
Tom Adams, Williamsport. Good to see everyone here. Sarah Country being, a lot of problems. The train derailment, prayers go out to that community. I kind of think, how do we handle something like that happen in this area? Hopefully it wouldn't. That train should have been marked hazmat, and it wasn't. For the past 20 years or so, the railroad companies have been lobbying administrations to not update their braking systems and some of the other systems that would really help with these kinds of accidents. And that's part of the reason with the railroad workers threatening to strike, because the safety measures aren't there. And so now we have an administration that wants to blame the previous administration. I'm not so sure. I'm sure it went through that administration too. Like I said, at least the past 20 years, and they're using braking systems that have been used since the 1800s. And that's a serious problem. And also, there's been a lot of sabotage in the country, so we're under attack with a lot of wicked things. The other comment I have is Proverbs 14:21 says, "He who despises his neighbor sins, but happy is he who is gracious to the poor." It's really hard sometimes when you're opposite sides of the aisle with people and you don't agree with things. The last thing you want to do is despise each other, because I know I don't want to be despised, although people will despise me. And I don't want to despise others, We don't want to do that, because we do ultimately have to face our Creator, and that's a reality whether you believe it or not. And we do want to care for the poor, and one way that I think is a real attack on the poor is when we have an administration and people throughout the globe, these elites, pushing to get rid of fossil fuels, because there's a real destruction and it's just nothing but an attack on the poor class, because it's going to wipe out a lot of people if we continue down these roads with trying to use energy like solar and wind to replace what we have, and it can't be done. It won't be done. It's physically impossible through physics, and we've reached the limits on those things unless there's some breakthroughs in battery technology. But these minefields that they use to get these things are just not toxic waste dumps, and a lot of stuff cannot be recycled, and it won't be recycled. But we have abundant energy right here in this county in Pennsylvania, and coal can still be used because we've developed ways to burn coal clean. We have the scrubbers, but when we start shutting this down, you're going to see more people suffering and dying. We still see it in Europe starting along those lines. So these things are really important. But also, I don't know if people are aware, I think one of the reasons why we have a lot of the nonsense going on, because we've turned our back on God, and we've allowed life not to be protected as our founders viewed the founding of this country. It's life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. The first thing in there which brings life is against tyranny, and abortion is one of those tyrannical methods to wipe out life, innocent life, that should be protected no matter what. In case people didn't know, the University of Pitt has been receiving some aborted fetuses from Planned Parenthood and some of their other allies. And Dr. Fauci, through his National Institute of Health, has been using the scalps from aborted babies, sewing them on the backs of rats to grow hair. And this is one of their experiments. Another experiment that they're doing is their premature babies that are being aborted alive, with their heart beating, and then they're cutting them open to harvest the liver. And they're using those, they claim it's for stem cells, for research, for humans, and experimentation. But science has already proved that our own stem cells are a lot more effective and very successful in healing our own bodies and not an aborted baby.
Thank you, Tom. Got a comment on that?
Okay, from MG. Is it possible to move the podium to face the commissioners? Some speakers are not admonished to turn to directly address the commissioners, while others are not. That's it.
Okay, we can look at that, the angles with the live stream.
I think her point is that when you come to the commissioners, you want to address the commissioners.
Right. In the old days, the podium was over there.
Yeah, be faced at us.
Oh, that's true. That's
And which
a
it
good
should
point.
be, it should be dressed towards us and not towards the public.
Yeah, live stream has
Yeah.
it over there.
Yeah. Okay, any other public comment at this time? Okay, hearing none, we have completed our agenda, so we'll be adjourned to February 23rd at 10 a.m. right here in this room. And thank you, have a good day, everyone.
We have a requirement.
Yeah. Commissioner?
I'm writing up the North Central PA.com. And I just wanted to go over the details with you to make sure I had everything right. You guys, are you sure? Just taking notes on the sheet that I need to transfer. So it's 1,067. Correct. And you said it's known as the camp area? Is that?
Yeah, the federal I don't think it's just
Yes, I do. How are you? My name doesn't go.
You know, when officials start, like, I know they said it's been decades, you know when the project, oh, you don't know because you're private, but it's been over 2 decades.
It's been 24 years.
Okay, I got 6.5 million, 10%. You're 10%, not get $10. That'd be a good deal.
Yeah,
Hell, I could cover that right now. Just like in a sense, why is this? Let me know why you're thinking. You're the director.
I am the director. Well, again, Lycoming County Resource Service. Just so you give me a yes, that's all I ever ask. My dad was, we could afford yes. So many times I get
No, I have that right. Well, it's on here.
So it will allow us to have future capacity for future field, landfill field